reason my mic was muted, so I'm going to do that whole part again. So, what? Basically, we left off with them completing the bell test. So let's start again. So after the bell test, they're doing tons of missions with, yeah, them. So one day, Christian would still be training. Christian would say, maybe I should go and try and go to that place that Minato told me to. Reverse summoning! And would reverse summon himself right back to Mount. He'd reverse summon himself to Mount. He'd be like, ah! And the giant and the toad would say, hey, what are you doing here? How did you get here? He says, and he pulls out a scroll and says, Minato, you're Jiraiya boy? You're Minato-san's boy? He says, you're Minato's son? He says, no, Naruto is. I'm just part of his clan. He says, he gave me these scrolls to train with. He says, yes, would you like to train at Mount Miyoboku for the trainings? He says, no thanks, bye. He says, I'll train later. Right now I want to stay as a average strong genin. I don't want to be so strong, so where like everything is boring. I want to have fun in my shinobi life. He says, alright, I guess you can, kid. Don't blame me when you get killed. Christian says, what? He says, oh, nothing, just go. He goes, fine. He goes, bleh, and sticks out his tongue at him. And then reverse summons himself. He says, man, that was Minato's kid. He says, Pops, who was that? He says, that was one of Minato's nephews. He says, what? Minato's nephew? He says, oh, damn, why didn't you tell me? I wanted to meet him. He says, it's a scrawny little boy who didn't want to learn Sage Mode yet, because he said that Shinobi would be too hard. He says, well, that would kind of make sense. Like, I think I would have some fun on my Shinobi life. So when Christian returns, he says, yo. So basically, the next day, he arrives first, waiting, saying, God, this is boring. Whatever, I guess I could do some hardcore training. He creates 30, about 100 shadow clones and starts training with them, fighting them all. Kakashi says, what are you doing? He says, training. He says, gee, that is some grueling training. Fighting yourself about 10 times is kind of hard. He says, it's pretty much fun because we're all even, so it's pretty even. We know all of each other's moves, so it's pretty even. That's how we discover new techniques. He goes, oh, I'm actually second today, not last. He says, no, yeah, finally, Kakashi, it's been a while till you've actually done that. He says, hey. He says, whatever, it's fine. He goes, whatever. So you want to help me? He says, sure. How about I train against your shadow clones? He says, yo, Kakashi, do you mind teaching me a new jutsu? While we're waiting, we still got a couple of hours till they arrive. Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura don't arrive till like 7. It's like 5 right now. Actually, I think they don't arrive till like 10. Because you told us to meet here at 11. It's only 10 o'clock. It's only about 7 o'clock. I still got 3 hours to go. He says, sure, I'll teach you a new jutsu. Can you teach me that lightning blade one that you showed? I'm going to skip over the Land of Waves arc since we technically already went over that. He says, can you teach me a new jutsu besides that lightning blade technique? Because you said I couldn't learn it since I'm not a Uchiha or don't have the Sharingan. He says, yeah, sure, I guess I could. I could teach you one that's like that, or you could do that. He says, I mean, only if you have the affinity for it. He says, what's your elements? He says, I don't know, let's try them. So he says, if the thing cuts in half, you have wind. If it crumbles, you have lightning. If it burns or gets wet, it's fire and water. It's fire. If it burns, it's fire. If it gets wet, it's water. And if it grows, I don't actually know what the one for earth is. He says, all right. He says, so the paper cuts and crumbles. He says, whoa, I have 2 elements. He's like, cool. I guess you have wind and lightning. That's cool. He says, yay, 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 yay. I have lightning. I have wind. So when they start to train, he's teaching him how to use. He says, what is your? Is he is he a yin-yang release? So when he does it, when he tries to make it, he does make a normal Chidori, but then the tunnel vision is too much. He says, that's something called tunnel vision. So you see, we're going to try and work past that. He says, alright, so put it into your fist instead. But I want to make it like a handshake. He says, fine, you can try that. So when he does, he says, yeah, I think I'll go with your method, Kakashi. Says, that's right. So he puts it in his fist and goes, ah, and black lightning starts to spark all around. He goes, ah, Shiden! Oh wait, no, that's purple. The lightning starts to grow purple. He says, Shiden! Yeah! And punches right through the log. Kakashi says, that's good. So what do you call it? I call it Shiden! Which is what? He says, I call it purple lightning. He says, cool, that's a good one. He says, ah! And takes him about an hour to work on it, and he's keep on working. He says, and he keeps on, and him and Kakashi are just sparring for an hour. With them having infinite stamina right now because of the QB. Christian shares some of the QB chakra with Kakashi whenever they get really tired. So once that hour is over, when Sakura, the first one to arrive is Sasuke. He says, what are you two doing? He says, oh, Sasuke, come to wanna join? He says, what are you guys doing? He says, we're doing some sparring. And I developed a new jutsu, Sasuke, before Naruto and Sakura see it. You wanna see it? He says, sure. He says, Shiden! And creates purple lightning in his hand. He says, you can learn the one that Kakashi learned. This is me, because I don't have the Sharingan, so, well, yeah. And Naruto can't learn it because he doesn't have the damn affinity. Actually, hey Kakashi, you want to do a fun test? Want to do a little test with them? He says, sure, what's the test? You give them all leaf, and if it crumbles, they have lightning style. If it cuts, it has wind style. If it burns, they of course have fire style, which is pretty obvious. I already said that. If it gets wet, it's water style. So the next person, so when Sasuke does it, it burns and crumbles. He says, cool. He says, what's yours? He says, mine is wind and lightning. He says, and Kakashi says, that's just like the fourth Hokage. He says, yes! When the next one to arrive is Sakura, they say, hey Sakura, let's see your element. She says, sure. He says, and I don't really know what Sakura's element are, because I don't think she has one. She says, what? It didn't do anything. Kakashi says, huh. I guess you don't have an affinity. She goes, so not fair. So not fair. She goes, they laugh, say, ha ha. This, ha ha, you don't got one. Yeah. And she says, shut up. And he gets punched in the head. He says, ow, shut it, Sakura, forehead. And she goes, what? And he says, you wanna go? And she goes, hm. And he says, that's what I thought. Then Naruto arrives and says, yo, Naruto, test your affinity, he says. They say, what's my affinity? He says, idiot, I just said test it. He says, what's an affinity? He says, it's either wind, earth, water, fire, air, or lightning. He says, oh, well, then let's try it out. And Naruto, only he gets is it cuts in half. He's like, alright, well, I mean, it's better than Sakura's. She done got one. He says, Naruto starts to laugh until he gets sent 300 miles away. I'm kidding. It's 200. It's only like 100. He goes, Kristen appears right behind Naruto and grabs him and says, well, that sucks. And just teleports back and says, and she says, how do you get there so fast? He said, I mark him with a permanent mark. He goes, what? You did? What? I said, he says, yeah, I marked all of you. Whenever you guys are in trouble, I mark. So that I can teleport to you. If ever you need serious help, like if someone's about to kill you. Well, either way. Just holler for help. I'm kidding. So, basically he would say, well, whatever. So, let's work on our elements today, Kakashi. Well, he says, well, I'm going to recognize for the tuning exams. They will be in 2 days. He says, alright, so you guys want to work on affinities right now? Christian says, Sasuke says, you guys want to work on affinities? Christian says, I'm going to work on the jutsu that Lord Force that Minato gave me. Christian teleports back home and practices them, saying, Hacha! Until he finally masters them. Until he finally masters the Rasengan, saying, alright, Naruto, I'm going to teach you a jutsu. He says, what is it? He says, Rasengan! and rams it into a tree. He says, I'm not going to use this jutsu that much. So this is your jutsu. This is a jutsu for you. I'm not using it. I use it sometimes, but just not now. I just developed my own jutsu. I don't really want to learn another jutsu. He says, I worked so hard on this jutsu. I'm kidding, I worked on an hour for it. Okay, look. I still haven't been close to perfecting the purple lightning. It's strong, but not too strong, he says. So then he says, alright, whatever, let's go. I'm gonna go moonlight. So basically they train. So when Naruto finally learns their Rasengan after a day, they go and meet up with, they say Konohamaru says, hey boss, he says, hey Konohamaru, this is my new friend. This is my, what? Hold on a minute. Is that purple lightning in Shinobi Striker? Did Kakashi learn Kirin? I think Kakashi learned Kirin. Alright, whatever. Hey, that's a good what if. What if Kakashi learned Kirin? I'm gonna take notes on that. Back to the what if though. So after he'd say, hey Konohamaru, let me give you a gift for meeting me. For our meeting. He says, well, what's our meeting? He says, we just met each other, so I want to give you a gift. He says, what's the gift? He says, the gift is a jutsu. He says, what's a jutsu? He says, multi-shadow clone jutsu. So when me and Naruto aren't around, you can use them and train with each other. Also, you and Moegi can do it. You, Moegi, and Udon can do it. He says, alright, everyone, take a look. Shadow clone jutsu, he says. And they say, whoa, because in 2 of him appears. And he says, can we only make 2? He says, no, that's the shadow clone jutsu. You're not learning multi-shadow clone jutsu because that takes up way too much chakra. And you barely have enough chakra for that. So try it. So after an hour of them learning Sakurai's uselessness arrives and says, they'll never learn it. Then Gerson says, shut up, uselessness. I mean, you couldn't even pull off the jutsu. And she says, oh yeah? And says, bet. And she goes, oh yeah, well so when she tries to create one, Christian just says, ha ha ha, you weakling. She goes, shut up. When she tries to punch, he jumps on a tree and says, yeah, sorry, I'm not like Naruto. He says, hey! He says, just stating facts, my guy. You are a Sakura simp. He says, Sasuke appears behind him and says, what's Sakura? He says, oh, she's a Sasuke simp. She's a you simp, Sasuke. And he goes, wait, Sasuke? When did you get here? He said, I've been here. And he goes, cool. Then he says, so, back to uselessness. You can't create a single clone. She says, and then he starts chatting with Sasuke. And then a little vein appears on Sakura's head, and she goes, he is dead. So when he's finished talking to Sasuke, he turns around to a punch in the face. He goes, I shouldn't have did that. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. She starts to get a little scared, and then he says, and just runs away, and says, haha, well, I'm not yes! We won by 1! Yeah, and I'm getting off topic. So basically he'd say, whatever, I'm out. Naruto, wanna train? He says, sure. They run off and they just, well, he says, nah, I think I want to stay with Sakura and Konohamaru. He says, alright, don't get too simpy. He says, shut up. Christian loves telling that to Naruto because it's funny to see his reaction. He goes, haha. Then Sakura says, I really don't like him. He says, Christian says, I don't mind. He's nice to some people. He really just doesn't like other people. Especially you, Sakura. He really finds you annoying. She says, shut up, Naruto, and punches him into the wall thingy with the blood. And punches him into a wall. So that's basically it for Naruto. Christian goes, oof. And Naruto says, were you here this entire time? He said, I was behind you. I lied. I did create a clone. He says, I am a real tricking person. It's either I'm good at tricks, or you're all dumb. And he says, well, I'm leaving. But then Sakura chases Naruto and Konohamaru. He's like, alright, well, this is fun. So he says, Flying Raijin! And appears right next to Naruto and says, yo! He says, oh shoot, that's a rampaging uselessness. Let's run. And that just makes her even angrier, so she runs even faster to kill them. Well, not kill, but... So then they say, ah! Christian says, hey guys, we might want to go. Everyone, hands on my shoulder. They all put their hands on his shoulder, and then he dips. She's like, where did they go? And he says, she looks behind him, and then they appear back, and then they run. They're like, ha ha! Naruto says, you really are a jokester, he says. You know what? Yes, I am. But then, Konohamaru rams into Kankuro. Kankuro grabs him by the shirt. Christian says, let go, now! Shiden! Creating purple lightning to his throat, then saying, you better let him go, or you're done. Then he says, what is purple gonna do? Then he changes it to black. He says, black lightning. Then he punches Kankuro, electrocuting him, saying, goodbye. And slams his face into the wall, saying, so weak. I've never seen someone as weak as you, Kankuro, but I guess weaklings are weaklings. He says, weaklings are weaklings. Idiots are idiots. He says, everyone thinks that you are so cool, Sasuke, but you really aren't. Everyone. And then he just starts talking. And he goes, well, whatever, I don't mind it. And then he says, Shiden! But he says, you guys better get lost before this whole place turns into a bloodbath. And he says, what can you do? He says, I just showed you what I could do, you idiot. And then he's like, wait a minute, who did that come from? He said, me, I am god of the sand. Person says, yeah, cool, man, never asked. He said, yeah, you did. He says, yeah, I did, actually. He goes, and he goes, ah, shoot. Nah, it's just annoying. And then he goes, ah! And then he goes into his QBI form and say, what are you guys doing in our... And then he says, never mind, pass through. And they say, how, what do you mean pass through? Why are you letting them through? He says, you guys are dumb, or your guys are dumb. Because it's the goddamn Chunin exams, you idiots. You expect them not to come to our village? Oh, what, you don't want them to participate? Yeah, I don't either, actually. He goes, this guy is really annoying. And he says, thank you, I'm glad to be annoying. Hope you enjoy your stay at the Leaf. It ain't gonna last long. He says, enjoy your stay at the Leaf. It ain't gonna last long. At all! And they say, what's that supposed to mean? It means you're gonna get immediately wiped out if you stay in our village. Come on. Shinra Tensei! Gone. So he says, well, whatever. I really don't care what you do. You guys are dumb and annoying. You are not intelligent. Intelligent, yeah. And he goes, well, I've made basically everyone in the village hate me. Well, not everyone in the village, but basically 4 people actually, which I don't care about. Konohamaru says, hey boss, that guy is not as annoying as everyone says he is. He says, Naruto says, 'cause he's not. Everyone just says he is 'cause they're annoying and they don't shut up. He says, well, he must be nice. He says, only nice to certain people. And he says, well, I mean, that makes sense. Not everyone has to be nice to you. I mean, at least if you just put a little bit of a mutual respect, that's not that bad. Yeah. So then he yells and says, well, I'm pretty bored, so I'm just gonna get ready for the cheering exams.